Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to another weekly reading wrap-up. I apologize, this is going to be a little bit low energy. I'm just feeling very tired. I spent all of yesterday painting my kitchen, finally, after a decade of saying I was going to, and I'm tired and I'm kind of sore today. And then there were thunderstorms last night and I did not sleep, like, at all. So I'm feeling rough around the edges, shall we say, but it's Sunday, which means it's time for a wrap-up. I have 4 things to talk about today, so let's get into it. The first one is Galileo's Dream by Stanley Robinson. I listened to this on audiobook, and so I'm working my way through more of Robinson's back catalog this year. I'm finally making the effort. I can get most of them from the library, so why not? And they're pretty good on audio in my experience so far. And while I usually really like Robinson's work, I'm gonna rank Galileo's Dream as like my second least favorite. My least favorite is Red Moon so far. I remember nothing about that book. It made no impression on me. But Galileo's Dream, it's a rare case of like the science fiction aspect of it really not gelling for me. The basic idea of this book is like 2 parts woven together. One is kind of a reimagining of Galileo's life as the first scientist. And so the structure of the book follows all those major points of Galileo's life that most of us know about. The other part of this book is like the secret history aspect, which is that Galileo is being visited by people from the far future, and they're time traveling him to that future where people live on the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter, and they're involving him first in like this ethical question of whether they should disturb the environment of a possible sentient thing on one of the moons. But then it turns more into somebody else's plan to disrupt Galileo's life to make him a martyr for science, which should affect the balance of power between religion and science throughout the course of human history. So there's quite a bit going on there. I just did not really care for the science fictional time travel aspect of this. There were parts of the book that are set, on the moons of Jupiter, and I thought I would find that really fascinating to see it through Galileo's eyes, and I did not. I was kind of bored by a lot of that. And maybe it's that this is just a case of the kind of time travel story that I'm not super interested in, especially because I know, just from the way that the book is set up, that nothing about Galileo's trips to the future and the knowledge that he obtains from that is going to fundamentally change the course of his life or history. Like, that's just not happening here. So what's the point, really? So, I don't know. I just didn't really get into this, but I do think I will find some parts of it to be kind of memorable. Mostly just the reimagining of Galileo's life. I didn't care that much about seeing his scientific discoveries, but seeing his family life, his relationship with his daughter Virginia, for example, that was far more interesting to me. And like, this isn't really spoilers because it's history, but for me, like, the book was always going to build up to the end of Galileo's life and the death of his daughter, and when that actually happened, I cried. Like, listening to this on audio, it was very affecting. But that was the end of the book and rather disconnected from all the other big epic stuff happening, so that was kind of interesting to me. Anyway, I read it, and I'll be moving on to something else by Robinson next. Next, I read The Great Witch's Baking Show by Nancy Warren. If this sounds at all familiar, it's because, yes, Nancy Warren is the author of the Vampire Knitting Club series, which I binge read last year, and she has 2 other series about like witches and vampires and stuff, which are absolutely super cozy supernatural mysteries, and this is the one that is obviously modeled on the Great British Bake Off, and there are witches. So the basic premise of this is that a young woman named Poppy enters this baking competition because it will get her closer to this aristocratic family's house where she thinks there is a clue to her birth mother. She was left at a bakery when she was a couple of days old and has no idea who her parents are, where she came from, etc. But she's recognized something at this house that links her to it. So she's joining the baking competition so she can be on the grounds of this big estate or whatever. And then she finds out she's a witch. I don't think I'm going to continue with this series. I'm pretty sure that each book is going to be set during a week of the baking competition, and that seems kind of fun, but I just thought that this main character, Poppy, way too much resembled what's her name, Lucy, from the Vampire Knitting Club books. Like, clearly Nancy Warren is writing to a formula with these series, and I'm not knocking that at all, but it was too similar, and I just felt like I wasn't gonna care very much about the main character. Also, it's so clearly based on the Great British Bake Off that it was a little bit weird to me. I was like, is this like copyright infringement or something? So this was a fun thing to listen to while I was painting my kitchen, but I don't think I'm going to continue on with it. I have started the other series that is also set in the world of the Vampire Knitting Club, which is the book club one. And I'm liking that one more because the protagonist is a bit more unusual. So I will be reading more Nancy Warren, but this particular series is just a little bit too average for me, I guess, to continue with. And then I capped off the week by finishing up 2 novellas. The first one was a very pleasant surprise, and that is Of Dragons, Feasts, and Murders by Aliette de Bodard. So I didn't realize until I was some ways into this novella that it's part of like a side series that's related to the series that begins with The House of Shattered Wings, I think, which is de Bodard's series about like fallen angels in an alternate Paris. I tried that series years ago. I read the first book and I kind of hated it. I did not get along with the concept of the series or the characters or the writing of it. Like, even now I can remember how much I just felt incredibly dissatisfied by that book. I don't think I've ever actually read a full novel or like a series by de Bodard that I've really liked, now that I think about it. That's kind of odd. I really like her short fiction though. So I didn't know that this novella was connected to that series or those characters until it kind of started to ring a bell with like characters' names. I was like, this seems familiar. But I enjoyed this so much, and possibly because it's kind of like sexy fantasy murder investigations. It follows the married couple who are the head of House Hawthorne in Paris. One of them, I think his name is Tuan. I'm going to say Tuan, even though I'm not actually sure how to pronounce this name. He is a dragon prince, and he's married to Asmodeus, who is like a fallen angel. And they are back in the like underwater kingdom of the Seine for Tet. And while they are there, Tuan is asked by a relative, I think, to look into the suspicious death of somebody at court. And it turns into more an investigation into somebody trying to sabotage the dynasty and destroy their power and lead to Tuan's family's extermination, basically. So that's serious. The thing that I actually ended up really enjoying about this is the dynamic between Tuan and his husband Asmodeus. Asmodeus is like genuinely a bad, brooding guy. His idea of fun is torturing people. But also, that means that the scenes where he's actually like super soft about his husband are like really cute. I don't know. The dynamic here was fantastic. So I really liked the story. I was much more into this world in this little bite-sized story, and I really liked the characters. So I'm already on to the second novella, which came out very recently, so I'll enjoy this. It's probably because it's like, you know, mystery investigations and a little bit of that kind of dark romantic vibe as well, just with a very stabby husband. So I enjoyed this a lot. Highly recommended. And I don't think you have to have read the whatever it is series, Dominion of the Fallen series by Bodard, to enjoy this. They really do stand on their own. And lastly, I finished up Sisters of the Forsaken Stars by Lina Rather. This is the direct sequel to Sisters of the Vast Black, which I read a couple of years ago and really, really enjoyed. So it kind of surprises me that I have very little to say about Sisters of the Forsaken Stars. We still follow the same characters, the Sisters of like the Order of Saint Rita's on their new ship, which is actually like a living creature, and they're dealing with the fallout of their involvement in foiling the central government's plan to spread a plague to the outer worlds and kill everybody. I was waiting for that moment where the story just like clicked together for me, and it never really did. It's fine, there's nothing like fundamentally wrong with this story. It could have been the mood that I was in while I was reading it. Stories about war and horrible politics are hitting a bit differently right now. But I don't know, I think possibly that there is just so much to dig into at this point in the story that this was too brief. There's more than a novel's length of material in just this one novella, and it could have been so much longer. I think what ultimately made this fall a little bit flat near the end is that it felt like there were some key climactic scenes where a shift is supposed to happen that we're not shown. That it's entirely off page. Like I would flip from one chapter to the next and go, okay, all of a sudden we're not worried about dying on this planet? What just happened? I think something was implied, but it was a phone call that we don't get to see. Anyway, that was a bit odd. So I think there needed to be a little bit more material in this. I think it needed to be a bit longer. It's still a good story. I think it still has some good things to say with the characters and their religious order and their calling to try to help people in this universe, but plot-wise, it needed to be filled in a little bit more. So we'll see. I definitely think there's going to be another installment in the series, and I will continue reading. And that is everything that I finished this past week. Do let me know if you have also read any of these. Leave me a comment down below. I'm going to go drink some more tea and try to wake up. Until next time, guys. Bye.